All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to another episode of First Attack here on Ultra Chen TV. I am James Chen, and today we are going to be talking about execution because this is actually a topic that a lot of people have been asking about recently. All sorts of levels of execution, and that's the hardest part about execution, I think, is that there's so many different levels of execution. I mean, I've had questions about how do you do an FADC combo. I've had questions on, how would you do a standing 720 with Zangief. And then I even had someone ask me, they basically said to me, I have trouble doing sonic booms with, on a pad or something like this. So, I'm actually going to see if I can help people out with trying to improve their execution. And so today, I'm going to see if I have time to cover all three of the segments that I wanted to do. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was that, obviously, trying to learn how to throw fireballs and things like that, there's definitely different levels of execution for everybody. And so one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about and maybe start doing more is rating segments of the show on the kind of level of, where you have to be to, get the most out of this. I've kind of generically thrown up this list here of 10 different levels of gameplay experience with fighting games. And so this way, hopefully on future weeks, what I can do is just say, today I'm going to focus on, how to throw a fireball. This is for level 1 players, or today I'm going to focus on how to do option selects. This is for level 7 players, I mean, because honestly, I was hoping to stay focused on some of the more like 1 through 4 levels of skill. However, a lot of people have been asking me about things like frame traps, and frame traps to me is like a level 6 or 7 concept. But I'm probably going to dedicate a whole episode to frame traps one of these days because a lot of people are wondering about frame traps and exactly how they work. I think it's my number one most asked question is about frame traps. So, at some point in time, I'll probably post this up on Facebook or on Twitter. And so that way you can kind of take a look at it, use it as reference so that in the future, if I say, okay, today we're actually going to do a level 4 kind of lesson, then you can kind of get an idea of where I'm going to be coming from. And for this first episode today, I kind of purposely chose 3 different areas of execution level. And actually, let me go back to that really quick here. The 3 different execution levels that I'm going to be going with is the first 15 minutes here, I'm actually going to talk about literally how do you do special moves. If you've just started playing fighting games, you have trouble throwing fireballs, you have trouble doing uppercuts, and even something like a sonic boom or something like that. You're having issues with these. I'm going to talk about some things that I think most players who have gotten really good at fighting games have just sort of started taking for granted. They don't even think about these things anymore, but it's just become a part of their execution, and they've got really good about it, good with it. So this is kind of geared towards a level 1 player. The next thing that I want to go over is how to do buffering 2-in-1s. I'll talk about what they are and why they're so important, and just some little general tips that'll help you get started. Obviously, in 15, I can talk about buffering probably for 5 hours. I'm not even joking because I love doing combos. I've always done combos my whole entire life. So but I just kind of want to get through some basics to help people, and hopefully some people if they have any further questions, like I said, I always have that Ask jchensor option. And you can send me questions more, and I can expand more on the concepts of buffering and stuff. And then very early on, when I first posed the Ask jchensor thing, a lot of people actually asked me about FADC combos. And obviously, it's something that's very important in Street Fighter 4. And it's a huge way to get wins and damage and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily the easiest of execution, but there's a lot of little tricks that you can do to make FADC combos a lot easier. There's actually a lot of little tricks, like ways to break it down so that it's not even remotely as hard as you originally thought it was going to be. Now, one thing I want to do mention before I go on, outside of this first segment of just how to do special moves, most of this is not going to apply to 3D fighting games, and most of it is not going to apply to Marvel, actually. So Section 1 will apply to Marvel and almost all 2D fighting games. Section 2, not going to apply to Marvel at all, because buffering in Marvel is a very different beast than it is in Street Fighter. Obviously not going to apply to a lot of 3D games like Tekken where you don't have fireball motions. And then, of course, FADC combos only going to apply to Street Fighter 4, not going to apply to, Third Strike, CVS2, or even SF Cross Tekken when it comes out, because there are no FADC cancels in that game. So, just want to get a lot of people kind of aware of that fact that certain segments here are going to apply to certain players and not others. So I've already wasted enough time here with the intro section here. I want to get on to how to do special moves and such. So hang on one second. Let me get you guys. Let me get myself situated here. Let's see if I have the technology here yet. Nope, not yet. I'm still working on this. There we go. Okay, perfect. Cool. So actually what you see here right now, and I'm going to set the second player to, I'm going to set the dummy to human. And I'm actually going to, this is actually going to be a little bit tricky for me because I'm going to approach it from every aspect possible. I'm going to approach it from the joystick, right? I'm going to approach it from the digital pad here, and I'm going to approach it from the analog stick here. Now, special moves are the crux of a fighting game. You can sit here and hit normal moves all day that you want, but unfortunately, in order to become a really expert at Street Fighter, you are going to have to learn how to do special moves. Because special moves open up your offense, they give you combos, they give you damage, and they just in generally cause the pressure on the opponent, and that's what makes them so important. So, one of the first things a lot of people like to teach when you sit down to a fighting game the first time, it's always, this is how you throw a fireball, this is how you do a spin kick and such. I talked about a different way to approach a game. First learn how to move, first learn how to control your character, and then, learn how to kind of poke around with your normal moves, understand your normal moves, and then try to pick up on special moves. The reason why people like to do special moves right away is because they feel cool when they do it. I mean, honestly, it's you do a code. It's like, I can't do a fireball unless I know how to do the fireball code, and that's what makes special moves a little bit exciting to players to do, and they do damage, and the character yells and all this stuff like that. So it feels cool when you actually do special moves. So the funny thing about performing special moves is that at first, what ends up happening is that you read these codes like down, like you read the code down, down towards, and forward, right? And so you're literally thinking to yourself, okay, I've gotta input this code down towards like this, and ooh, I'm running low on batteries on my controller. You can see the lights flashing on there. But one of the things that actually happens with people trying to do special moves is that in order to play Street Fighter correctly, you have to get special moves to a point where it's second nature. You don't even have to think about it. And so doing a fireball is as simple, like, I've seen people play when they first start, and doing a fireball is like, you see them kind of do this thing and they kind of go crazy and stuff like that when they play. And really doing special moves is about being as calm as possible. You just want to pull them out in clutch moments whenever you need them. And so the one commonality, and this again is kind of what I was talking about that thing that a lot of players take for granted after having done fireballs and uppercuts and spin kicks for their entire lives practically, is that the codes are, the common thing between a joystick, the analog stick, and the digital pad, and this is very important to realize, is that all three of them will always reset to the center. And although this sounds kind of weird at first bringing this up, this is actually a really important thing. I'm going to mention a couple of things that are going to sound kind of weird and strange at first, but once I get into it a little bit, hopefully it starts to make a little more sense. But whenever, for example, you just want to throw a fireball, the nice thing about it is when you push down and let go of the joystick, you can see here on this little, I'll show you here. As soon as you let go, it springs back to the middle. Now, the reason why this is very important and the reason why I bring this up is because this actually gives you the ability to put the least amount of effort into doing special moves as possible if you take advantage of the controller and let the controller do work for you. An analogy that I came up with is, if you're carrying a giant trash bag and you want to throw it into a trash bin, you're not going to come over here and lift it up and throw it in the trash bin. What does most people do? They swing it backwards first, which is unintuitive because the trash bin is in front of you, but you know what? You swing it backwards and then you let the weight of the trash bag kind of pull it forward, and then you can get it higher. In other words, you're using, the trash bag itself to help you get it into the bin. And in a weird way, that's kind of how you do special moves as well. A lot of times, I've seen players do stuff with joysticks where when they try to do fireball motions, they literally they hold down and they're thinking go down, forward, and then forward so you can see it on the, kind of make sure I do this code. And what actually turns out is that the joystick can do almost all of the work for you. I mean, so the two main things that I want to say is, one, let the controller do as much work for you as possible to do the special moves. And two, interestingly enough, and this is a personal philosophy of mine, I can't speak for any other player that's out there, but to me, when it comes to doing a special move, where I want to end the joystick is the most important thing. It's like, it is what makes doing special moves a little bit easier. For example, throwing a fireball is, like you can see on the screen over there, you can see it's down towards forward. So to me, my brain is going to say, okay, I need to end at forward. That is where I need to end my controller at. So when you do a fireball motion here, watch what I'm going to do here. I'm not even going to think about trying to do the fireball motion, the actual fireball motion. If I hold down and just kind of move my hand towards, well, I can't do this with my back turned, I'm sorry. But basically what you can kind of end up doing is just sliding your thumb to the side so that it's straight. So what I'm not actually physically trying to do the entire fireball motion. I'm just, while my thumb is holding down on the stick, pushing the stick to right, and not letting it jump back, but I'm pushing it to right. And so what happens is, the motion to me is all just one thing. I'm not trying to think about this crazy motion. I'm just holding down, pushing the joystick to forward, and pushing punch button. And then right away, a fireball comes out like that. Oh. Yeah, there we go. So sorry okay, I'm going to yell a little bit because I'm a little bit further away from the microphone. But see right here, I'm holding down on the controller, and instead of trying to think about doing the motion, all I'm going to do is know that while I'm holding down, if I move my thumb to end at right, you'll notice that I automatically do a fireball motion. So, it's not anything where you have to kind of go crazy about it. And it works on all of them. Like, I can do it on the digital pad too. So I'm just holding down, and all I know is I want to end at right. So I just move my thumb to the right, and out comes the fireball. And that's actually the easiest way to do it. So if you just think about this in as simple as a way possible, let the controller do the work for you. You don't have to move the joystick to neutral, and this happens most often on a joystick. Most people who are learning how to use a joystick, they try to move it to right. And especially on the Mad Catz TE sticks, if you guys don't know what a square gate is, I apologize, but you can feel it if you move the joystick inside the TE stick. There's 4 distinct corners. And so it actually makes it really hard to stop the controller right in the middle for right. So instead of trying to go from down and try to figure out a way to, stop the joystick in the middle or anything like that, if you want to, for example, if I just wanted to move right on the controller, I know how to hit right. And you almost never have the problem of accidentally, hitting one of the diagonals in this situation. So when it comes to throwing a fireball, instead of moving the controller and actually moving the joystick up to get to forward, let the fact that the joystick returns itself to the middle do that for you. So when, and unfortunately I can't show you my hands when I'm doing this, but if I hold down and go to forward, you're going to come out with the fireball like that. And, uh-oh, 2-player pause, my pad just died out of batteries. I apologize, guys. Great, wonderful. All right, hang on a second. Well, actually, you know what? While I'm fixing this, let me jump to a commercial real quick, and I'll be right back as I take care of this problem. So, sorry guys, I'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that. I have now got myself a new set of fresh batteries here. So let's see if I can continue with what I was talking about here. So yeah, even on the joystick here, because the joystick returns the center, you don't actually have to manually try to move the controller in quarter circle forward. Just hold down, and then while kind of still holding down a little bit, shift to forward. Don't just do it directly. Kind of slide the joystick along the bottom and move the joystick to forward, and that's going to help you come out with the fireball motion a lot easier. And obviously the same thing goes for reverse quarter circle back when you actually do spin kicks and such. And and despite the fact that spin kick is just fireball on the other side, there's something weirdly mental, it's confusing to people. Like, a lot of people have actually said they have trouble doing uppercuts in one direction over the other. That's a very common problem, especially on pads here. They have trouble doing one thing facing one way or facing the other way. And when you play a character like Fei Long, even though it's just a backwards uppercut, so it's the same thing as a forward uppercut on the other side, it just feels really different. I'm not sure what causes that. So, you could be amazing at throwing fireballs on either side like this, but then all of a sudden when you have to do a hurricane, it's just, for some reason, it's just kind of messes with your brain sometimes. I remember that happening to me a lot early on when I first started playing Street Fighter. But once again, the reason why I talk about letting the joystick do a lot of the work to do special moves and such really comes down to the fact that you want to do these special moves as fast as possible. You don't want to sit there and try to throw fireballs. That's not going to work for you, especially in these very pressure-laden situations. You want to actually throw them out as fast as you can. So, learn to do it with as minimal movements, minimal motions as possible. And even, for example, on the TE stick, a lot of people have told me, because of that square gate that I talked about, that there's that distinct corner that a lot of people have had trouble doing fireball motions because it feels like the joystick gets stuck down there. Oftentimes, the advice that I give to people when they start learning to use a TE stick is to not rub the joystick on the edges. This happens especially if you come from using the analog stick, because when you use the analog stick here, it's very much you're sliding everything on the corners and you're using on the rim, and it helps you move the fireball. It helps you do a fireball motion because it's so smooth on the circle. But on the joystick, you do not want to rub the controller on the edge. Make sure you just kind of lightly move the joystick in your hand. I don't know if I can kind of show you, you can see barely, if I just barely move this, you probably can't hear it. But I'm barely moving the joystick and it's clicking, which means that it's registering down with me barely touching the joystick. And so what you learn is you can actually move the joystick in a super small circle and still come out with a fireball. So, Wow, it's taking me a lot longer to go through how to throw a fireball than I thought, to be honest with you. So I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get through all three segments here within 45 minutes, but because I do want to talk about the uppercut code, which is probably one of the most complicated codes there is, and how to actually perform this properly. There's a lot of different philosophies on how to do uppercuts properly, and so it's kind of rough for me to try to say one way is better than the other. If you know how to do it one way, if you're used to doing it one way, by all means, keep doing it the way that you're doing it, especially if you can get it consistently. But in general, for me, I actually think it's a really, really powerful skill to learn how to uppercut from neutral. A lot of people uppercut well while walking forward because it's the first part of the code already. So they'll be walking forward and they just do a code like this. It's a personal philosophy of mine to learn how to uppercut from neutral, like while you're standing still, because it's more applicable to many situations. There's a lot of different places that you can actually use the neutral uppercut, and I'll get into that a little bit in the next section. But again, I talked about it earlier that the two main things: letting the joystick do a lot of the work, and two, knowing where you want to end the controller. Now, obviously, an uppercut code is forward, down, down, forward, like that. Forward, down, down, forward. So that's the code for an uppercut. The key to an uppercut is the down forward part. They've made the code purposely confusing because back in the old days it was a super powerful move. In the very first Street Fighter 2, all the way up until Super Turbo, the Shotos were invincible until they reached the top of the sky. I mean, the uppercut was a super powerful move. So they purposely made the code a little bit, confusing to make it so that it was a powerful move that you had to do a more difficult code for. And, since then, everyone's kind of gotten used to it now if you've played enough fighting games, so it's not that bad. So, but one of the key things about doing an uppercut code is the fact that it ends at down towards. And that's probably the most confusing part. Now, if I tell you to just move the controller to down towards, if you're using one of these things, you'll just hit down towards or hit, diagonal like this. This is what you actually want to get used to, is holding down forward, because that will help you make sure you do an uppercut code and not accidentally do a fireball code. So fortunately, they kind of did this because this was a problem in old games. If you walk forward and then do a fireball code, a fireball comes out instead of an uppercut. Because before, when you did that, sometimes you wanted to walk forward and throw a fireball and you couldn't, and an uppercut would come out like that. So they've actually changed it now so that if you walk forward and do a fireball code, you come out with a fireball. So in other words, you have to be pretty accurate with your uppercut, because if you go towards, down, down, forward, and then forward, a lot of the times you'll come out with a fireball instead of an uppercut, which is not what you wanted. So, as I said, one of the most important things about doing special moves is knowing where you want to end the controller. And in this case, I know I want to end it at down forward. So to be able to do the uppercut, I'm going to start at neutral. And if you tap forward, it's just like tap forward like this. Just tap forward really quick, really fast. Tap it, tap it, tap it. And that's how I'm going to start my uppercut. I'm just going to tap forward really quick. Tap forward and let the joystick return to neutral. Right? And then from there, I hit down. So what happens is you tap forward and then just hit down like this. And then all I have to do is remember muscle memory on where I want to end the controller, which is at down forward. So I tap forward and then go down and down forward. And there comes an uppercut right there. So tap forward, down, down forward, and here comes an uppercut. Now, when people do this a lot, they actually start learning kind of almost like they roll it. So it's not like tap forward, let go, tap down. They actually tap forward and then move the joystick down manually just to get it out as fast as you can. And it's an odd code for sure, but it's definitely very learnable, especially in Street Fighter 4, where the code is super lenient now. And but once again, very important, because when you just tap forward for the uppercut, because if you get used to holding forward and then doing an uppercut, a lot of the times is you mess up positioning, because sometimes you'll move forward when you uppercut when you didn't want to. Or for example, if I actually want to do fierce uppercut with Ryu, if I learn to do it from forward and I hit fierce, I'm going to come out with the gut punch instead, the solar plexus strike as they call it. So learning to do uppercuts from neutral is very useful. So just kind of to reiterate that, keep your controller at neutral, tap forward, and then quickly move it to down and then down forward and end at down forward. And that goes with pretty much any controller. So, get used to holding down forward here. So quickly tap forward and then roll it down like that. And as long as you remember to end it at down forward, the chances of your uppercut coming out increases drastically. See, I mean, I'm not even doing this very well on this digital pad right here, because this digital pad on this controller is barely used. It's barely worn in. But all I have to do is remember, end that down forward, and it comes out almost magically. And it's very useful to keep that in mind. So if you do a fireball, make sure you end at forward and concentrate on hitting forward. Don't concentrate on moving the controller from down forward to forward so that you're trying to move it up or whatever. Just think about holding right at the very end so that you just do a fireball code and you end at right. So I don't know if this makes a lot of sense to people, but it'll be really useful if you guys, next time you power up the game, to just give it a shot. And make sure you keep in mind where you want to end the joystick controller at. And this actually applies to charge moves as well, especially for someone like Guile or for someone like Balrog. Someone actually told me that they have a lot of trouble doing sonic booms on an Xbox pad, and they have trouble doing flash kicks on an Xbox pad. So it's the exact same thing. Keep in mind where you want to end the controller. If you keep in mind where you want to end the controller, you'll actually find out oftentimes that it doesn't matter what happens in between. Watch, I'll show you with Guile first real quick. So, I'm doing this on a joystick, but if I actually roll forward, like take a look at the code that I'm doing here. I'm basically doing a fireball. I'm charging it down back, and then you see down, down, forward, towards. If I do that, the sonic boom is going to come out after I charge no matter what. So honestly, while you're charging for the sonic boom, just throw everything out of your mind. Just know that you have to end at towards and hit a punch button at the same time. Same thing with a flash kick. Just know you got to end at up. So just hit up and go and just hit kick. Now the nice thing about flash kicks is that you can end it at all three up positions, whereas a sonic boom. So this is actually really important. You cannot do sonic booms at offensive crouch, and you cannot do sonic booms at forward flip. So to do a sonic boom, you really have to make sure you hit forward. And that's actually probably one of the things that makes it a little bit tricky for pad users, because it's a little bit trickier to make sure that you only hit straight. Now, I said that you can only do sonic booms at straight. This is there are exceptions to this. Bison is an exception. For some reason, he can do scissor kick at offensive crouch, and I think they did that so that you could go scissor kick into head stomp right away. It's really interesting. And then of course Balrog is an exception because he has charges specifically designed to end in those directions. But even on a pad here, if you want to do a sonic boom, you can probably let go and hit. Well, let me see if I can do this with my head turned. Yeah, so just get used to hitting right on the controller, and then while you're charging down back, just hit right and punch. Like, don't think about trying to like really move it there. You can actually let go of the pad slightly and then hit straight. Again, let the pad do some of the work for you. It's probably hard to, it's impossible. You can't see me do this, but I'm literally letting go of the digital pad practically before I hit straight and punch. I'm letting the digital pad go to neutral, and then I'm hitting towards and punch. And that's what's getting me my sonic boom code to come out. Same thing with the digital pad here. I mean, with the analog stick, you know, I can see how when I let go of the stick, it doesn't cause Balrog to jump or do anything crazy. So once again, just kind of let go of it and then tap forward and hit punches. Let the controller do the work for you, and you know, you'll find that you can get these special moves out a lot faster. There's a lot, of course, more crazy special moves, you know, Guile Super, spinning pile driver 720s and stuff like that. But, you know, those are obviously a little bit more of the complicated ones, you know, also, you know, super motions and stuff like that. And maybe if I have time, I'll go into it in another session, because I didn't think it would take me half an hour to get through fireballs and uppercuts and sonic booms, frankly. I thought, you know, I would talk about that for like 15 minutes and be done with it. So after this, I'm going to try to go into a little bit of buffering. So two-in-ones, as they're called. And you know what? I don't even know if I'm going to get a chance to show some of that, because it'll probably take me 15 minutes just to talk about the history of buffering and such. But in any case, so as a beginner, as a level 1 player, if you're having trouble do special moves, the things, my advice to take in mind and is always, you know, let the controller do the work for you, and just be mindful of where you need to end the controller. And those are the kind of things that will help you, because you know, if you end it in the right place, that's going to increase your chances of getting the move out. And if you let the controller do the work for you, you actually gain some accuracy. I mean, you know, here's the Star Wars geek in me, but, you know, think of it, you know, let go, Luke, you know, that kind of thing. You know, don't be scared to let go of the controller sometimes, or let the controller do the work for you, you know. Take advantage of the fact that, you know, all joysticks and pads and such center themselves, and that'll actually help you do the special moves. So, but when we come back here, I will go over a little bit on buffering. So this will probably be a level 2 or 3 kind of lesson at that point. So I'll be right back. Welcome back to First Attack. And I just spent the last half hour talking about, you know, how to do special moves like fireballs and such. And I'm hoping to also teach you guys something a little bit more higher level than that. I mentioned before we went on break that this is kind of like a level 2, level 3 kind of thing. Probably a level 2, because eventually you need to start learning how to buffer special moves, as they call it. And to be honest with you, I really hate the term buffering. I really, really hate that term, because buffering kind of means like inputting a bunch of stuff and then having it automatically happen later. That's technically what buffering means, and that's not what's happening at all when you do buffers in this game. When I first started learning about this technique, I called them, you know, terminating a move. I called them terminating moves and stuff like that, and because that's kind of what you're doing. The better word probably is just canceling. You know, I almost kind of wish we just called them canceling. Like, what normal moves are cancelable? You know, but a lot of people use fireball. David says, I thought that's what we said. And, you know, a lot of people do use the word canceling, but when you read in like a lot of technical documents, they talk about buffering. And so hopefully, I mean, I hope he's right. I hope people have stopped using that term, because I don't really like that term in general, but whatever. In any case, what exactly is buffering? Well, you know, we have moves like this, like a low forward with Ryu. And what buffering actually ends up, remember last week, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, when I went over frames, one of the reasons why I went over frames before going over this execution is because buffering is very much associated with frames. They're tied together very importantly. because remember I talked about every move has a startup, every move has active frames, and then every move has recovery. So for example with Ryu, startup, and then after it finishes kicking, all that rest of that is recovery frames. What you're technically doing by buffering a move is that you're removing the recovery frames of a normal move and instead transitioning it instantly into a special move. So for example, if I do low forward, there's all those frames where his leg is retracting. But if I cancel it into the fireball, you notice how the leg is there and then right away the fireball comes out. All that retraction from his leg does not happen anymore. So when you see someone do low forward fireball, they're not actually doing low forward weight into fireball. They're literally canceling low forward into fireball. So one of the things I talked about on the frame session was that, you know, the active frames are the frames where you're actually hitting the opponent. In, I would say, 98% of the situations, those are the only frames that you can cancel into a special move. Now, obviously, there's a lot of little exceptions here, but I don't want to go into all of them because it's going to be a little bit confusing. But in essence, if I want to do low forward fireball, if I hit him with low forward and then try to do a fireball code, you know, if I finish the code after the active frames go away, it's not going to cancel. So you cannot cancel low forward once the active frames leave. You have to make sure you finish the fireball code during active frames, and this is how you're going to get used to buffering. Now, there are some moves that just can't be buffered, like Ryu's low roundhouse. They just don't let you do that. So this is where character knowledge comes into play. You actually have to know which moves can be canceled and which moves cannot. Like Ryu's far fierce cannot be canceled. His close fierce far hard punch cannot be canceled, and his close hard punch can be. And his crouching hard kick cannot be canceled, but his crouching medium kick can be. Now, one of the things that I did not talk about very much in the last episode was the concept of hit freeze. Well, the concept of hit freeze. So a move, for example, like low forward has, I think we talked about it, 5 active frames. And if I actually hit him, you can actually see the game kind of halts for a second. Ken freezes in that. Whoops, let me try to see if I can do that right. Ken kind of freezes and Ryu freezes a little bit. And what they actually implement, and this has been true since the beginning of time, whenever a move connects, you kind of get this freeze. So like look how roundhouse looks if I kick and whiff. But when I hit Ken, you notice that when it makes contact with him, it kind of freezes a little. But if I whiff, he just kind of swings it around and like Fierce. See, look how smooth Fierce is animated. But if I hit him, you see how he freezes with his arms straight like that. There's this concept of hit freeze. Hit freeze is very useful because it actually extends the amount of time you have to buffer moves, because whereas normally a close-up Fierce may only have 2 or 3 active frames, the hit freeze actually increases it, so maybe you have 10 frames or so to be able to cancel it into a fireball. So, you know, knowing this, one of the biggest keys to buffering, and this is another one of those personal philosophies that I've kind of developed over time, is one of the tricky things about buffering. Let me know if you can actually hear the timing on my joystick. I'm going to move the microphone down to my joystick and see if you can hear this. So I hope people could hear that, because what it actually turns out to be, this is a timing that's just kind of ingrained in my head, because I know when I hit the button, that's how long it's going to take for the low forward to hit him. So the second button, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if I'm doing an uppercut code. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a fireball code. It doesn't matter if I'm doing super It doesn't matter if I'm doing a spinning pile driver for whatever reason I want to cancel a move into a spinning pile driver. That's the timing I need to use, this timing right here. I must have hit the microphone switch when I was moving it, so sorry about that. What part did they leave off on when they heard that? I accidentally flicked the off switch. I apologize about that. But I'll just start again, so I apologize if this was kind of repeated already. But it doesn't matter what you're canceling a move into. I know that that's the timing that I want to do. So for example, if I want to cancel into a fireball, you hear that, right? Even if I want to cancel into a super, same timing. Even though the code is a lot longer, it was the same timing, if you can hear that. All three of those was the same timing that you heard, was that timing right there. Now, if I decide to do it slower, well, Street Fighter 4 is super lenient in this game, but if you do it super late, it's not going to come out, right? So here's the question. Why would you ever do it slower? If you know this timing will get it out every single time, you know you have to finish the code at that timing. And this is actually going to help you with a lot with your buffering, because sometimes if you try it and the move doesn't come out, you know, that's the problem right there, is because you're doing it too slow. And if you can hear the button presses that I'm doing right now, you know, that's just too slow. So if you know the timing has to be, you know, faster, you'll never do it too slow. You'll always get it at the right time. And that's actually one of the keys to doing buffering, is that you just, you know, you learn how to do it. And one of the things I talked about in the last segment where, you know, trying to minimize the movement, letting the joystick do the work, knowing where to end your controller, that actually helps here when you want to do low forward fireball. So, you know, I told you to do a fireball code, hold down and then just move the controller forward. And so since I'm minimizing the fireball code to just rolling forward on the controller and knowing that I want to end at forward, in order to do a buffer, you know, I'm just going to hold down, hit low forward, and know I have to go to forward. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking this code, which is down and forward, quarter circle forward, and hit a punch button, and I'm really just kind of holding down, hitting the forward kick, and then rolling the controller to forward and hitting the punch button. And the punch button, where you end the controller and the timing of when you hit the button, is going to dictate how you do the controller motion. So if I want to do low forward fireball, knowing that the timing of the button has to be at a certain time and knowing I have to end the controller at forward. So the last segment I talked about knowing where you want to end the controller and knowing the timing, you know you have to move the controller to that position in the timing that it takes to hit the button. So putting it all together like that helps you do that, even when you want to do an uppercut code. I talked about doing an uppercut from neutral as opposed to doing an uppercut from towards. And this is one of the reasons, because if you want to punish someone and do fierce into uppercut, it's actually easier to do it from neutral, because if you learn to only do it while walking forward and you only learn to uppercut that way, when you try, you're going to come out with the wrong move on certain characters, you know. So it's actually easier just to learn to do fierce from neutral and quickly do an uppercut. Now, all I know is I want to reach down forward and hit the button at that timing. So by the time I hit the second button, I want to be at down forward. So that kind of teaches you how quickly you need to do the motion. And this is just execution. There's tricks to this, But if you want to cancel into a super, you just have to learn to do the code really fast. But as long as you know that timing of the button push, you know how fast you have to do the code, and that's actually very helpful in learning how to get your buffers properly. A little bit plug for myself, I guess. If you actually check out, if you want to learn more about buffering into super combos, please go to GameFAQs.com. Check out my Capcom versus SNK2 fact. I actually have a whole section in there that talks about different ways that you can cancel into supers, different tricks, canceling crouching moves into supers, putting the button press in the middle of the first fireball code and such like that. Little tricks like that. So check that out at GameFAQs.com. But I wish I could talk more about how to cancel the supers, and maybe another episode I'll do that. Because, like I said, I actually didn't think it was going to take this long to do a lot of this stuff. So I'll be right back really quick. And actually, while we're at commercial, if you could please let me know if you want me to start on FADC combos, or if you actually want me to go into an Ask jchensor segment like I typically do. Let me know which you prefer. I guess type in a 1 for me going on into FADCs, and type a 2 if you want me to answer some of the questions from the community. And so we'll be right back. There we go. Hey, there we are. All right. So it seems pretty split down the middle. And to be honest with you, in 10 minutes, I probably can't cover a lot of FADCs that I want to, because if it took me that long to do fireballs and buffering, it's probably going to take me a lot longer to do FADCs. So rather than start on it and just cover a tiny fraction of it, I'll save it for another episode. Maybe next episode I'll try to do FADC combos and plinking, because they're both kind of like execution stuff. So we'll see how we can go with that. Of course, a lot of this is just kind of flying by the seat of our pants here, about time and such, because a lot of times it takes a little bit longer to go into subjects than I originally thought. So I am just going to answer a few questions here that I got. And of course, I want to remind everyone, please, submit your questions. Tweet to @UltraChenTV with the hashtag of AskJChensor, all one word. If you have a question that's longer than that, send an email to ultrachentv@gmail.com, and in the subject line, just put AskJChensor in there. And of course, ask anything you want. Ask any questions that you want. You can ask about history. You can ask about, how do I help a tournament scene? You can ask, in the last episode you mentioned this about buffering. How do you do this? And I've never understood how to do that. And you could even put down something like, I'm a Zangief user. I want to use Zangief. Please teach me how to do SPDs instead, spinning pile drivers and such. Ask anything that you want. And so, for example, here, I just want to mention to a couple of people who've sent me questions. One is Raiden Zoop, who asked in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I saw Hugo's clap leaves you with enough hit stun for you to sweep after that. Is this what a frame trap is, he asks? And the answer is no. That's actually just straight up a combo. I want to address that, and another question from Bronson Roberts. He says, I'm sometimes getting thrown out of my frame traps. Do throws beat them clean, or am I doing them wrong? And the reason why I want to talk about these two questions is because it will take me over 45 minutes to talk about frame traps. So I'm going to dedicate a whole entire episode to frame traps. So rest assured I will get to them at some point, hopefully soon in the future. But I will get to frame traps eventually. So please, I ask for a little patience. Hopefully I'll get to them. Obviously, it takes me a lot longer to get through some topics than I originally thought, largely because they're more complex than I realized, and two, because I'm overly verbose, and everybody who's watched me do commentary knows that. So, and I am perfectly aware of it. I'm trying my best to learn not to do that. So I want to answer some other questions here instead. From thoughts, for example, what I think of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Jose B. I think I've answered one of his questions before, but he actually asked me, "Do you think Street Fighter Cross Tekken would be better off without all the comeback factors, especially with scramble mode and tag mode and such?" And to be honest with you, I don't think Street Fighter Cross Tekken has any comeback mechanics. Pandora mode is pretty useless, and activating cross assault pretty useless as well. It doesn't last very long from what I've seen of it, and I don't know, I just haven't seen any practicality to it because the computer controls your other character. And so outside of that, to be honest with you, I don't really think there is any comeback mechanics in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. So let me see if I have some other questions here. Someone asked me, any advice to how to overcome a plateau, when, especially if online is the only options. I've talked about hitting a wall before. And, one of the interesting things is that I'm hoping at one point in time I might even be able to discuss this. But if you look at this, one of the reasons why I've divided this into the 10 different sections that I did was because almost every one of those, there's a wall that you're going to run into in between. Hitting a wall in fighting games is very common. I just want to let people know that you are going to reach a wall at some point in time, and it will be discouraging. You're going to get to a point where you just feel like you can't improve anymore, and this happens to every single one of us at every level. I want to talk about, for example, at Winter Brawl, when Justin defeated Juicebox. The last game that Juicebox played, he didn't even look like he was moving the joystick barely. He was already kind of defeated. And, in his mind, he was probably thinking to himself, why can't I get to this point where I can compete with Justin Wong? And to be honest with you, he absolutely can. But even at that level, he's a 9. He's at a consistent top 8 finisher right now, and he's at that wall to try to get to 10, to try to get to that Justin and Combo Fiend level, to try to get to, a Sanford Kelly level. This is kind of that's a wall that he's hit. So there's walls all over the place while you're trying to learn how to become a fighting game player. How you break through those walls, to be honest with you, it's very hard. One of my favorite stories that I've always liked to tell, which is going to take too long to tell because I talk too much, but, is at one point in time that I overcame one wall that kind of turned me from, a 5 or a 6 into more of a 6 or 7, because I figured out, the key that I figured out was that opponent that I was playing a lot, who was better than me, who would beat me all the time, was literally manipulating me into doing everything he wanted me to do. And that when I figured out how to counter him, he realized that and had already moved on to the next step to beat my counter. I never even had to hit him with the counter. He knew I figured out how to counter him already. And, as I remember just being so salty. I was just walking home from the arcade, and I was so angry. I was literally furious, just wondering to myself, like, why can't I beat this guy? Why is this guy just destroying me all the time? And on the way, halfway walking home, it just struck me, and I was like, he is making me do what he wants me to do. And that was the light bulb moment to me, where I realized I could do the same to my opponents. A lot of people, when they play Street Fighter, they learn how to attack, they learn how to defend, but they don't learn how to manipulate the opponent and such. So, when it actually dawned on me that, it's not like, oh, with Honda, here's a good attack sequence, or with Bison, here's a good attack sequence. When it dawned on me all of a sudden, no, I should do stuff to make my opponent think, like, I can control what it is that he's going to do. As soon as that dawned on me, I broke a wall. And it's going to take those kind of things, epiphanies, if you will. And so, I'm sad that I don't have a solid answer to that. I wish I could say, well, to overcome a plateau, play, 8 hours a day, and and practice your combos and training. It's never going to be like that. A lot of it is self-discovery, and that's actually one of the things that kind of makes fighting games really interesting, is that you start to learn about a lot about yourself, and you start to learn and you start figuring out where a lot of your weaknesses are. And I could get all wax nostalgic, philosophical about fighting games and stuff, but I'm gonna spare you guys all that stuff. So, but yeah. So again, if you have any other questions, please send them in. Any question will do, and send them in. Tweet to UltraChenTV with the hashtag AskJchensor, and or send an email to ultrachentv@gmail.com. And so that'll be it for First Attack this week. Next week, I guess, if we have time, we'll be coming back from Final Round. So not sure if we'll be back in time to do an episode next week, but we'll see how that goes. But the next episode I do, hopefully I'll get to FADCs and plinking, and then maybe after that I'll finally be able to get into frame traps. But stick around. We are going to go straight into level 3 focus with Ultra David. So, watch that. He's going to be talking a little bit about the recent development of Morrigan in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. All right. Thanks, everybody.